The global response to Dr. Wright's defiance fractured along predictable lines. Military leaders called it suicide. Religious groups proclaimed it humanity's cosmic test. 17 nations immediately withdrew from the Earth Coalition, rushing to construct their own evacuation ships. The withdrawal of their resources created critical shortages in the SHIELD project, forcing Chen to improvise with untested technologies. In the sprawling research complex beneath the Himalayas, Chen reviewed the latest simulations. All failed. The wave's projected destructive capacity exceeded their defensive capabilities by orders of magnitude. Each morning, he watched more scientists abandon their posts, choosing evacuation lotteries over hopeless equations. Another 14 resignations today, reported Dr. Samira Kauri, his chief of research operations. Her eyes were shadowed from sleep deprivation. Mostly quantum theorists. The Rigelians offered them guaranteed spots on their arcs. Let them go, Chen said, studying the three-dimensional projection of the approaching wave. Fear is contagious. So is courage. Kauri laughed bitterly. We need physicists more than motivational posters, Commander. We need people who believe this is possible. He zoomed into the wave's leading edge. There's something wrong with the Council's data. These energy patterns, they're too ordered for a natural phenomenon, or even a weapon. The facility shuddered as another deep Earth tremor hit, the 7th that week. The planet itself seemed to be responding to the approaching threat, tectonic plates shifting unpredictably across all continents. Permission to speak freely? Kauri asked. Chen nodded. You were the one who crushed the Centauri insurgency. You could have your pick of evacuation spots. Why stay on a doomed planet? Before he could answer, the security alarms blared. The facility's main screen showed a Council diplomatic vessel entering Earth's atmosphere without clearance. It bypassed all defense systems, as if they were non-existent. They're landing on the primary lawn, security reported. Chen and Kauri arrived at the landing site as the ship's ramp extended. A single figure emerged, not the expected Thraxi or Valorian diplomat, but a scion, one of the eldest council races whose members rarely left their homeworld. Over 9 feet tall with translucent skin that revealed complex circulatory systems glowing with inner light, the being carried no visible technology. Commander Chen, the scion said, its words somehow perfectly audible despite barely moving its mouth-like aperture. I am Nexus 7, Observer of Extinctions. A ghoulish title, Chen replied evenly. I have witnessed 37 species face cosmic elimination events, some through astronomical calamity, others through their own technological hubris. None chose to stand against the inevitable as yours has. Kauri stepped forward. You've come to persuade us to evacuate. I've come to understand. The scion's inner lights pulsed in complex patterns. Your species is young, barely emerged from planetary concerns. Yet you reject the consensus of civilizations with millions of years of collective knowledge. This defies rational analysis. Chen studied the alien carefully. You've seen this specific wave phenomenon before, haven't you? The scion's lights froze momentarily, the equivalent, Chen guessed, of surprise. The Council's briefing contained significant omissions, Chen continued. This isn't the first time this wave has crossed the galaxy, is it? You cannot hope to comprehend cosmic cycles that extend beyond your evolutionary timeline, Nexus 7 said, but there was a new hesitancy in its tone. Try me, Chen said, stepping closer to the towering alien. Because I think you're not here as an observer at all. I think you're afraid, not of the wave, but of what we might discover about it. About you. The Lauren delegation stormed out of the conference chamber, their translucent membranes flushed deep purple with rage. Behind them, General Kavarn of the Krith slammed his barbed fist into the negotiation table, splitting the reinforced material. You allow these cowards equal standing, he demanded of Chen, mandibles clicking in agitation. The Lauren refused to share their psychometric technology, yet expect access to our plasma artillery designs. Chen stepped between Kavarn and the door. The Loren survived Krith slave camps for 3 generations. You can survive one conference room with them. The 7-foot-tall insectoid warrior leaned down, bringing his compound eyes level with Chen's. You have never witnessed the Loren feeding on consciousness, human. During the Orion conflict, I watched them reduce an entire battalion to mindless husks. And they watched your people liquefy their children for genetic material. Chen replied evenly. Ancient atrocities won't save anyone from this wave. We move forward together or die separately. The tension broke as Area Navarite burst into the room, her clothing disheveled, eyes wild with excitement. Behind her followed Kavosh, the spindly Teclari mathematician still adjusting his breathing apparatus to Earth's atmosphere. Commander Chen, Area gasped, we've isolated the wave's frequency. She thrust a tablet toward him. The display showed oscillating patterns that made little sense to Chen's military training. Explain, he ordered. The wave isn't random destruction. It's a carrier signal, Area said. There's embedded information in the energy patterns, mathematical constants that couldn't occur naturally. Kavosh's translator crackled. It bears the hallmarks of sentient design. The Council's narrative of an ancient superweapon is questionable. Kivarn hissed, mandibles flaring. You suggest the Council deliberate deceives its member species. I suggest, Kavosh replied, that the Council may not understand what they've detected. A commotion outside interrupted them as security alarms blared. Surveillance feeds showed a Krith soldier dragging Area's assistant toward a shuttle dock. Your man is stealing our research, Chen snapped at Kivarn. The Krith general's multifaceted eyes betrayed no emotion. Knowledge that saves the galaxy should not be controlled by one species. Chen was moving before the translation finished, sprinting through corridors toward the dock. He rounded the final corner to find the Krith soldier digitally copying files from the lab's mainframe to a portable drive. The alien warrior outweighed him by at least 100 pounds of chitinous armor and muscle. Chen didn't hesitate. He launched himself at the soldier, using the close quarters to negate the Krith's superior reach. The alien's forearm spines slashed his shoulder, but Chen locked his arm around the Krith's breathing tubes and squeezed. They crashed into equipment racks, black Krith blood mixing with Chen's red on the floor. The soldier threw Chen against the wall with enough force to crack ribs, but Chen kicked the portable drive across the room as he fell. The Krith charged to retrieve it, giving Chen the opening he needed. He grabbed a nitrogen coolant canister, smashed the valve, and directed the freezing spray at the Krith's compound eyes. The crystalline structures froze instantly, blinding the warrior. Chen staggered to his feet as security finally arrived, followed by Kivarn himself. Your soldier, Chen gasped, fighting for breath, tried to steal, the only hope we have. Kivarn studied the scene, then slowly lowered himself to one knee, a gesture Chen's cultural briefings identified as extreme respect in Krith society. The Krith value strength and conviction above all, Kivarn said. You have demonstrated both against a superior opponent. His mandibles clacked rhythmically. What you propose with this alliance defies all logic and experience. It will almost certainly fail. Kivarn rose and tore the military insignia from the captured soldier's armor. But it will not fail from Krith betrayal. My people pledge our full resources and my personal battle oath. As medical staff treated Chen's wounds, Area and Kavosh arrived with the damaged drive. Did we lose anything? Chen asked. Area smiled grimly. No, but we found something in the copies Kivarn's soldier made. Embedded in our work files was spyware, Council encryption. Someone on the Council, Kavosh added, is very interested in our progress. The question becomes, do they want us to succeed, or to ensure we fail? Erebus IV's atmosphere howled with metallic particulates that scarred the Prometheus's hull as they descended. The landing struts sank into the planet's soft, ash-like surface, the remnants of a civilization reduced to dust millennia ago. Dr. Wright adjusted her exosuit's respirator, surveying the bleak landscape through the porthole. Surface radiation is within tolerance, but barely. We have 6 hours, maximum. Assuming the temple exists, Santos muttered, checking the charge on his plasma cutter. The former thief had spent the journey keeping to himself, rebuffing Wright's attempts at conversation. Ancient alien archives always seemed to appear in myths, rarely in reality. The Lauren texts were specific, Wright countered. The coordinates matched this location precisely. Santos snorted. The same Lauren who refused to share living quarters with the Krith. Forgive me if I question their commitment to our little suicide pact. Lieutenant Kamara, their security chief, interrupted the exchange. Proximity alert. Multiple vessels decelerating from FTL. Xerillian energy signatures. The main view screen displayed a ragged formation of ships dropping into orbit. Their hulls were mismatched composites of salvaged materials, bristling with retrofitted weapons. The infamous scrap fleet of Xerillian pirates who preyed on abandoned worlds. They're hailing us, Kamara reported. The screen flickered to show a Xerillian commander, his face a mass of cybernetic implants grafted over reptilian features. Unidentified vessel, this territory is claimed by Captain Vexnar of the scrap fleet. Your presence violates our salvage rights. Wright stepped forward. This is Dr. Eleanor Wright of Earth. We're conducting research, not salvage operations. Research yields knowledge. Knowledge has value. Value belongs to the scrap fleet. The Xerillian's artificial eye whirred as it focused. You have 2 options. Surrender your vessel and join our labor pools, or be disassembled with your ship. The transmission cut. Kamara checked tactical displays. Their main vessels are maintaining orbit, but they're launching surface skimmers. 20 minutes until they reach our position. What's our armament? Santos asked. Research vessel. Kamara replied grimly. Point defense systems only. Santos moved to the navigation console, studying the surrounding terrain. Those ridge formations to the north. They could conceal our approach to the coordinates. The radiation would kill us before we reached the temple, Wright objected. Santos reached into his pocket and produced a small silver device. Radiation scrubber. Military grade. Stolen from a Valorian weapons lab before my career change. Wright raised an eyebrow. You just happened to bring illegal technology on this mission. Insurance policy, Santos replied with a thin smile. Old habits. Wright made her decision. Lieutenant, prepare to relocate the ship. Santos, deploy your scrubber. 20 minutes later, the Prometheus rested within a narrow ravine. External systems powered down to minimize detection. The expedition team, Wright, Santos, Kamara, and 2 specialists, navigated the razor-sharp rock formations on foot. Santos' device emitted a faint blue field that neutralized the worst of the radiation. There, Wright whispered, pointing to a structure partially embedded in the cliff face ahead. Unlike the formless dust covering most of the planet, these ruins maintain geometric precision. Concentric hexagons descending into the rock like an inverted pyramid. The Temple of Preservation, said exolinguist Chen Wei, examining the symbols etched into the entrance. The patterns match Lauren descriptors, but these aren't Lauren glyphs. Santos studied the sealed entrance. No obvious security systems. Either they weren't expecting visitors, or what's inside is protected differently. Wright finished. As they approached, the ground trembled. From their hiding place, they watched as 3 Xerillian skimmers landed on the ridge above, disgorging armed salvagers. They're tracking our radiation signature, Kamara realized. The scrubber creates a detectable clean zone. Santos suddenly stepped away from the group, moving toward a rockfall nearby. What are you doing? Wright hissed. Creating a diversion, he replied, attaching a small device to the unstable formation. When this triggers, head for the entrance. I'll draw them off. Wright grabbed his arm. That's not the plan. Plans rarely survive first contact, Doctor. Santos checked his weapon. I've outrun professionals across 12 systems. These scavengers won't catch me. And if they do? Santos's face hardened. Then my sentence gets commuted on a technicality. He nodded toward the temple. The archives are what matter. The wave won't care about my redemption story. Before Wright could object further, Santos activated the device and sprinted into the open, firing his weapon into the air. As Zerillian shouts erupted from above, Wright hesitated only a moment before leading her team toward the ancient doorway that had begun, impossibly, to slide open at their approach. The crystalline matrix fractured under the immense pressure, sending a cascade of failures through the Venusian harvesting rig. Toxic atmosphere flooded the primary chamber as emergency bulkheads slammed shut. Containment failing on levels 3 through 5, reported Engineer Kozlov, his voice steady despite the crisis. We've lost 30% of today's harvest. Major Lydia Volkov wiped caustic sweat from her brow, the heat inside her pressure suit approaching dangerous levels, despite cooling systems operating at maximum capacity. Venusian atmospheric harvesting was always hazardous, but this was their third critical failure in 7 days. Evacuate non-essential personnel to the upper platform, she ordered, strapping on supplemental oxygen. I'm going to stabilize the primary collector manually. With respect, Major, the collection chamber is already at 340 degrees Celsius, Kozlov objected. Even in a pressure suit. I'm aware of the temperature, Engineer. Volkov checked her helmet seals. But those crystals are the only component we can't synthesize elsewhere. No crystals, no deflection arrays, no Earth. She moved through sequential airlocks, each one bringing her closer to Venus's true conditions. The innermost door opened to reveal a scene from some industrial hell. Machinery glowing red-hot crystalline structures forming and shattering under tremendous pressure. The matrix stabilizers had failed completely, sending feedback through the system. Volkov navigated the narrow catwalks to the central control node. Her suit's external temperature readings exceeded design parameters as she manually overrode the harvester's safety protocols. She had 40 seconds before her suit's integrity would fail catastrophically. The harvester shuddered as she realigned the pressure valves, diverting the worst of the forces away from the forming crystals. 30 seconds. Her gloves began to deform as she accessed the backup cooling systems. 20 seconds. Warning indicators flashed across her visor as she rerouted power to the containment field. 10 seconds. The system stabilized just as her suit's outer layer began to melt. Volkov staggered back toward the airlock, vision narrowing from heat stress and oxygen deprivation. She collapsed inside the airlock as it cycled, barely conscious when the medical team retrieved her. Through blurred vision, she saw the harvester's readings, a successful matrix formation, enough crystalline material for another array segment. Worth it, she whispered before losing consciousness. 12 hours later, Lieutenant Maya Okonkwo stood on the Spartacus's bridge, watching the Zerillian fleet's approach on tactical displays. Earth had never seemed so vulnerable. Defense satellites offline after the initial strike, orbital platforms crippled, and the majority of Earth's remaining ships trapped in Mars' shipyards. 17 vessels, reported her tactical officer, a young ensign who should have been in training, not facing an alien armada. Their main destroyer is twice our tonnage, and their weapons systems outclass ours in every category. Okonkwo studied the fleet formation. The Zerillians moved as predators, not strategists. Powerful, but predictable. What's the status of the asteroid mining platforms in Sector 4? She asked. Abandoned during the evacuation, Lieutenant. Some automated systems still operational. A plan began forming in Okonkwo's mind. And the cometary debris field near Jupiter's L3 point. Dense but navigable with proper calculations, the navigation officer replied, confusion evident. Why? Okonkwo pulled up the star charts. Because we're going to use 300-year-old tactics against forces who've never had to fight for their hunting grounds. She addressed the bridge crew, all too young, all too few. The Zerillians evolved as ambush predators on a world with no significant bodies of water. Their tactical thinking is linear, pursuit and capture. They'd never developed naval strategy. Understanding dawned on her officers' faces as Okonkwo outlined her plan. The Spartacus would draw the Xerillian fleet into the debris field, using minimal engine signatures to simulate damage. The mining platforms would be reprogrammed to redirect specific asteroids, creating a three-dimensional battlefield where the Xerillians' superior numbers would become a liability. They'll be forced to engage us one by one through the debris channels, Okonkwo explained, negating their numerical advantage. And the mining explosives, asked her tactical officer. Okonkwo's expression hardened. We rig them throughout the field. When enough of their fleet is committed to the pursuit, we detonate in sequence, creating a cascade effect. That's a one-way mission for whoever triggers the sequence, the officer realized. The Spartacus will trigger it, Okonkwo confirmed. The rest of you will evacuate in advance via the maintenance shuttles. Earth needs every trained officer it can salvage. Silence fell across the bridge before her second-in-command spoke. With respect, Lieutenant, we'll draw straws for who stays to detonate. Not because we question your authority, but because every one of us would volunteer. As the crew prepared for battle, Okonkwo sent one final transmission to Earth. Contingency plans for the deflection arrays should her strategy fail. The Xerillian fleet adjusted course, taking the bait. The trial by fire had begun. High Commander Xerax's hologram towered over the emergency council chamber, his elongated Thraxi features set in an expression of contempt. Your resistance is not merely futile, but criminally negligent, he declared. These deflection arrays will create harmonic resonances that may amplify the wave's destructive potential. Dr. Wright maintained her composure despite the provocation. Our data suggests otherwise, Commander. The progenitor schematics. Primitive technology from a dead civilization, Xerax interrupted. The council races survived by heeding scientific consensus, not chasing archaeological fantasies. Chen stepped forward. If you're so concerned about our safety, why did you return? Your evacuation fleet is well beyond the wave's projected path. The hologram flickered as Xerax shifted uncomfortably. Scientific observation. The wave represents an unprecedented cosmic event. From a safe distance, Wright noted, while we risk everything, your species has always been willing to risk extinction for emotional satisfaction, Xerax replied. The Council offers one final opportunity. Share your research and schematics. We will evaluate their potential and, if viable, implement them on a broader scale. After you've already abandoned the galaxy, Chen challenged. The Thraxi commander's skin flushed a dark purple. My patience wanes. Commander, the Council's request will become a demand within 24 hours. Consider your options carefully. The hologram vanished, leaving the chamber in tense silence. They're afraid, Chen said quietly. Not of the wave, but of what we might achieve. Wright nodded. If humans, barely 2 centuries into interstellar travel, succeed where the Council failed, their authority crumbles. An alarm blared, interrupting their conversation. Security feeds showed 3 Thraxi infiltrators breaching the Mars deflection array's outer perimeter. They're not waiting 24 hours, Chen said grimly, already moving toward the exit. Kavosh slipped through the maintenance conduits of the Mars facility, his slender Teclari physiology advantageous in the confined space. He had been running diagnostics when the intruder alert sounded, followed by communications jamming. The infiltrators had targeted the array's primary control node, exactly where Area would be finishing her calibration sequence. His 4 hearts accelerated at the thought. He had never intended to form an attachment to a human. Their species were incompatible in nearly every biological measure, their lifespans mismatched by centuries. Yet Area's mind, her brilliant, unconventional insights, had bridged the physiological gap. Kavosh reached a junction above the control room and peered through the ventilation grate. 2 Thraxi commandos held Area at gunpoint, while a third downloaded data from the central console. The encryption sequence, one demanded, pressing a plasma blade to Area's throat. It changes hourly, she replied defiantly. Kill me, and you'll never access the complete data. The Thraxi pressed harder. Perhaps we start with fingers, then. Kavosh acted without hesitation. He dislodged the grate and dropped into the room, deploying the neural disruptor he'd modified for Thraxi physiology. The commandos convulsed as the targeted frequencies overwhelmed their nervous systems. But the third infiltrator recovered faster than anticipated. A plasma bolt caught Kavosh in the side, burning through his exoskeleton. He collapsed as Area broke free, grabbing a fallen weapon and firing at their attacker. The Thraxi fell, but the damage was done. Kavosh. Area knelt beside him, her hands trying to stem the spreading blue fluid from his wound. Stay with me. Medical's on the way. The Teklari mathematician felt cold spreading through his system. His species lacked the regenerative capabilities of humans. The plasma burn had ruptured too many vital organs. Complete the sequence, he whispered. The arrays must synchronize precisely. Don't talk. Save your strength. Area's voice broke. Listen, Kavosh insisted, his translator struggling with his weakening signals. The council, they knew. The wave, not the first. What? What do you mean they knew? Found evidence in restricted archives. The wave comes every 50 millennia. His breathing grew labored. Council races, survive by evacuation, maintain dominance. Never try to stop it. Understanding dawned in Area's eyes as security forces finally broke through the sealed doors. They're using it to eliminate competition. Rising species that might threaten their power. Yes. Kavosh's visual receptors began to dim. One more thing. Luttervex, my research partner. She knows the truth. Find her. His final thoughts were of numerical patterns, the elegant mathematics of the universe he had dedicated his life to understanding, and the peculiar, beautiful illogic of human emotion he had only just begun to explore. Santos stood on the crater's edge, watching thousands of modified crystalline spikes being driven into the lunar regolith. Each technician moved with practiced efficiency, their suits gleaming in the unfiltered sunlight. The moon's surface was transforming into something alien yet purposeful, humanity's last desperate innovation. Your criminal past is proving unexpectedly valuable, Dr. Wright said, joining him at the observation platform. The council would never have considered using a celestial body as a capacitor. Criminals think differently than scientists, Santos replied, his breath fogging his helmet visor. You look for what should work. We look for what could work despite all logic saying it shouldn't. Wright studied the former thief's profile. Is that why you suggested scattering the collectors across the entire Tycho crater rather than concentrating them? Conventional wisdom says energy storage should be centralized for efficiency. Santos gestured toward the sprawling installation. But centralized systems have centralized points of failure. Distribute your risk. Distribute your chances of survival. A technician approached with urgent news. The final calculation showed a critical power shortfall. Even with the lunar capacitor operating at full capacity, they would still need 30% more energy to synchronize all 7 arrays simultaneously. The equations don't lie, Wright said, reviewing the data. We need more power or fewer arrays. We need all 7 for complete coverage, Santos insisted. Any gap in Earth takes partial exposure. Wright's response was cut short by the appearance of 3 ships breaking lunar orbit. Vessels not of Earth design, but distinctively Martian colony configurations. Behind them followed ships from Venus and the Jovian moons, colonies that had declared independence during the Exodus, choosing isolation over cooperation. They're hailing us, the communications officer reported, surprise evident in her voice. The view screen activated to show Captain Eliza Ortega of the Martian colonial fleet. Her weathered face reflected the harsh conditions of Mars, but her eyes held unexpected resolve. Dr. Wright, we've monitored Commander Chen's broadcasts regarding the Council's deception. Wright tensed, anticipating hostility. Captain Ortega, Your colonies made their position on Earth's suicidal stand quite clear months ago. Positions evolve with new information, Ortega replied. The Council manipulated all of us, Earth and colonies alike. We've brought every functional fusion generator from our settlements, plus specialized equipment from the Venusian and Jovian operations. Santos stepped forward. Why the change of heart, Captain? Your colonies were preparing your own evacuation vessels. Ortega's expression hardened. Because we're still human, Mr. Santos. When the Council abandoned this galaxy, they divided us, hoping we'd remain fractured until the wave arrived. She paused. We refused to let them dictate humanity's final chapter. In the synchronization chamber beneath Olympus Mons, Chen and Aria confronted their most critical challenge yet. The integration of the lunar power source had revealed a fundamental flaw in their equations. The arrays will work, Aria explained, her fingers tracing the holographic simulation. But the deflection creates a quantum backflow. Whoever initiates the synchronization from the primary array will absorb lethal levels of radiation. Chen studied the equations, searching for alternatives. Remote activation. Impossible. The quantum entanglement requires biometric presence. A living operator must manually adjust the synchronization in real time. How long would the operator survive? Aria's voice faltered. Minutes at most. Complete cellular degradation within an hour. Chen nodded, decision already made. Reconfigure the primary console for my biometrics. Jackson, no. Aria gripped his arm. There must be another way. There isn't, not with the time remaining. Chen's expression softened momentarily. I've led people into battle before, Aria. Sent them to die while I remained behind. Not this time. The chamber door slid open as Lyrvex entered, the Thraxi scientist still adjusting to her new alliance with humans. Since her defection following Kavosh's death, she had worked tirelessly to integrate Council technical knowledge with the progenitor designs. The colonial ships have arrived with additional power sources, she reported. But I've detected a new complication. The wave's leading edge has accelerated beyond previous calculations. We have less than 12 hours, not 24. Chen absorbed this without visible reaction. Then we work faster. He turned to Aria. Begin the final modifications to the Mars array. I'll coordinate with Wright for the lunar capacitor activation. As Aria reluctantly departed, Lyrvex approached Chen. Kavosh believed humans would succeed where the Council feared to try. Her multifaceted eyes studied him curiously. He died protecting your physicist. Was their connection worth such sacrifice? Chen met her alien gaze steadily. Kavosh didn't die just for Aria. He died for the principle that life, all life, deserves the chance to continue, even if success isn't guaranteed. A peculiarly human sentiment, Lyrvex observed. Yet I find myself considering its merit. Good, Chen replied. Because in 12 hours, we'll need every sentient being in this solar system to believe in possibility over certainty. The wave appeared first as a shimmering distortion, barely visible against the starfield. Then it unfurled across the sky like liquid fire, blues and whites intertwining in patterns that seemed both chaotic and purposeful. From the Mars Array Control Center, Chen watched the most beautiful harbinger of death humanity had ever witnessed. Lunar capacitor at 98%, Wright's voice reported through the crackling communication channel. Static increasingly corrupted all transmissions as the wave's leading edge interacted with the solar system's electromagnetic field. Energy transfer commencing in 3 minutes. Chen acknowledged, then turned to the complex synchronization controls before him. Each display showed one of the 7 arrays: Mars, Venus, Earth, and the 4 positioned at Lagrange points throughout the system. All green, all ready. The products of impossible cooperation and desperate innovation. Final diagnostics complete. Aria confirmed from her evacuation vessel, already departing Martian orbit. Her voice betrayed the emotion she was fighting to control. Remember, you'll need to adjust the quantum harmonics manually as the wave approaches. The frequency will shift unpredictably. Understood. Chen kept his tone neutral, professional. No point in difficult goodbyes. Safe journey, Dr. Narrate. As the last evacuation ships cleared the danger zone, Chen stood alone in the facility designed to save humanity. The irony wasn't lost on him. The wave accelerated, its leading tendrils now visibly distorting the light from Jupiter. Instruments registered immense energy spikes, beyond anything their simulations had predicted. The screens monitoring Earth showed people gathered in fields and on rooftops, watching the approaching cosmic fire. Not in panic, but in silent witness. Energy transfer initiating, Wright announced. The facility hummed as power surged through the superconducting channels from the lunar capacitor. All 7 arrays activated simultaneously, their emitters extending toward the approaching wave. Chen's hands moved across the synchronization panel, adjusting harmonics as the wave's frequency shifted. The deflection field began forming, visible as a barely perceptible distortion extending from each array. But something was wrong. The display showed power fluctuations throughout the system. The arrays weren't properly aligned. Synchronization failing, Chen reported. The wave pattern is more complex than our models. His fingers danced across the controls, trying to compensate. We're getting partial deflection, but it's insufficient. At current trajectory, approximately 60% of the wave will still impact Earth. Silence met his announcement. Then Wright's voice returned, unusually calm. Chen, I need you to shut down all Earth's power systems. Immediately. What? That would. Trust me. Tempest showed us something on Venus. The wave's energy can be manipulated through opposing fields. We're going to create a planetary energy sink. Chen hesitated only a moment before relaying the order through emergency channels. Across Earth, power systems shut down in cascading sequence, a deliberate, coordinated blackout of an entire civilization. As darkness spread across Earth's night side, Chen noticed something extraordinary on his monitors. The wave's approach was changing, its energy patterns shifting in response to the sudden absence of electromagnetic activity. It's working, he breathed. The wave is responding to the energy void. But the deflection remained insufficient. Earth would still face partial exposure. In that moment, Chen saw the only possible solution. The original progenitor schematics had shown not just deflection shields but focusing lenses. With rapid adjustments to the Mars array, he could reconfigure it from a shield to a lens, concentrating the entire deflection capability on Earth alone rather than the solar system. The cost was clear. Mars and the outer planets would receive the full brunt of the wave, but Earth would survive intact. His hands were already making the necessary modifications before the thought fully formed. Chen, what are you doing? Wright's voice cut through, alarm evident. The Mars array configuration is changing. Necessary adjustment, he replied calmly. Earth is what matters. As the reconfiguration completed, the 6 remaining arrays aligned their deflection fields, now focused entirely around Earth. The blue-white fire of the wave bent visibly around the planet's silhouette, channeled by the Mars array acting as a quantum lens. Chen watched the monitors showing Earth's safety, a deep sense of peace settling over him despite the wave's approach. In his final moments, he opened a general broadcast channel, knowing his words would reach Earth despite the interference. This is Commander Jackson Chen from the Mars Deflection Array. The wave is being redirected. Earth is safe. He paused, watching the wave engulf Mars' orbit. Remember that when faced with impossible odds, humanity stood defiant. That defiance is now your legacy. Build something worthy of it. The wave struck, and Chen's world dissolved into brilliant light. 1 year after the wave's passage, the research vessel Prometheus I approached the transformed Martian orbit. Through the observation deck's transparent aluminum viewport, Dr. Wright studied the phenomenon that had replaced the red planet, a swirling mass of energy and matter that defied conventional classification. Quantum readings are off the scale, reported Dr. Narrate, now the head of the newly formed Cosmic Phenomena Division. The wave didn't destroy Mars. It fundamentally altered its state of existence. The planet's surface had become a landscape of luminescent patterns that shifted and flowed like liquid crystal. Structures resembling architecture emerged and dissolved in rhythmic sequences, while energy formations spiraled through the transformed atmosphere. The patterns matched progenitor script, Wright observed, similar to what we found in the Temple of Preservation, but vastly more complex. Santos, officially pardoned and now serving as the expedition's security chief, pointed toward an unusual formation near what had once been Olympus Mons. That structure hasn't changed shape since we arrived. Everything else flows, but that remains constant. Wright made her decision. Prepare the shuttle. We're going down. The landing team stood upon what should have been impossible, solid ground amid a sea of energy. Their specialized suits registered no radiation danger, despite the swirling patterns of light that surrounded them. It's as if the planet exists in multiple states simultaneously, Aria marveled, her instruments struggling to classify what they detected. Part matter, part energy, part something else entirely. They approached the stable structure Santos had identified from orbit, a perfect dome of shifting blues and silvers. As Wright neared it, the surface rippled, then opened like an iris. It's responding to your presence, Santos said, weapon ready despite the lack of obvious threat. Wright hesitated only briefly before stepping through the opening. Inside, the dome contained a single feature, a humanoid form suspended in midair, composed of pulsating energy patterns that occasionally resolved into recognizable features. Chen's features. Impossible, Wright whispered. The figure's eyes opened, focusing on the landing party with evident recognition. Eleanor. Chen's voice emerged, somehow resonating directly in their minds rather than through the air. You came back. Jackson. How? I don't entirely understand it myself. The consciousness that had been, Chen replied. When the wave struck, it didn't destroy. It transformed. My physical form was converted, but my consciousness expanded. Aria's instruments went wild. He's not just surviving in this environment. He's part of it. His neural patterns have been integrated into the very fabric of transformed Mars. Not just me, Chen explained. I'm the first to fully awaken, but others are here, everyone who was on Mars when the wave hit. We're becoming something new. His form shimmered, briefly displaying intricate patterns similar to the progenitor script. The wave wasn't a weapon or a natural disaster. It's an evolutionary mechanism, a cosmic catalyst designed to elevate life beyond its current limitations. Wright approached the energy being. The Council knew this. Some suspected. Most feared it. The older races encountered previous waves and chose evacuation over evolution. They feared becoming something they couldn't control. Santos laughed incredulously. So they abandoned entire galaxies to preserve their power structures. Yes, Chen's form expanded slightly. Through me, the progenitor archives have become accessible. They created the wave cycles billions of years ago to ensure life in the galaxy would continue to evolve rather than stagnate. Each cycle brings the opportunity for transformation. Can you come back with us? Wright asked, her voice betraying emotion rarely displayed. Not in physical form, Chen replied. But I can communicate across the distance, and more importantly, I can help you understand what comes next. What does come next? Aria asked. Chen's energy form pulsed with what seemed like excitement. Humanity stood defiant when the galaxy abandoned hope. Now humanity will lead the next phase of cosmic evolution. His form projected complex equations and schematics into their minds. These will allow you to create communication arrays to spread the truth throughout the galaxy. Wright understood immediately. The Council will try to prevent this knowledge from spreading. Of course, Chen's form seemed to smile. They'll claim we've been corrupted or destroyed. They'll try to maintain the old order. But we'll be ready for them, Santos said with determination. More than ready, Chen confirmed. Because while they hid from evolution, we embraced it. and the progenitors left more than just deflection technology in their archives. His form expanded once more, showing them visions of a transformed galaxy. Worlds evolving beyond their current limitations, species cooperating rather than competing, and technologies that worked with cosmic forces rather than against them. The galaxy abandoned hope. Chen's consciousness concluded, but humanity's defiance has opened a path to a future greater than any species has imagined. And we'll face that future together, transformed but unbroken.